Hi, my name is Maggie Stiefvater. That's pronounced Steve like the name and otter like the animal. It means stepfather in German, which is super appropriate because my father-in-law has been married 3 times, so he's had plenty of time to be a stepfather.
That was a good answer. So, what's your latest book? Are you going to be asking questions about one book, or are you going to be asking Maggie questions about her whole career?
About her whole career.
Okay. Well, then,
Good.
You don't have to worry about that. All right.
That way there's no pressure on the recent book to be the most impressive.
So, who's going to go first? You should introduce yourself and ask your questions.
Okay. I'm Michelle Alonso, and my question is if you put any personal experiences into any of your books.
I actually don't consider myself a very good writer. I consider myself much more of a thief because if I want to have new people in my books, I have to meet new people. And if I want to have new settings, I have to go to a new setting. I actually changed the entire way that I wrote my characters because I saw a photograph of one of my favorite artists' studios, Maxfield Parrish. So he would paint all these amazing fantasy situations and huge mountains in the background. And on his desk, there was a pile of rocks, and he would use those rocks and turn them into his mountains. And so I feel like that's the way I do my books as well. I'll meet a rock and I turn it into a mountain or vice versa. But it's really difficult for me to write something if I haven't experienced a small part of it myself.
Okay, so my name is Demi, and my question is, if you would cast the Raven Boys into a movie, who would you cast as the characters?
If I would cast the Raven Boys as a movie, who would I cast as the characters? All right, so this is a difficult question for me to answer for 2 reasons. For starters, because I don't think of my characters that strongly visually. I have to remind myself what they actually look like, because I'm more thinking about what's going on inside their heads instead. So sometimes I'll accidentally change their eye colors in the book, and I have to go back and readers say like, no, you said the Gandy's eyes are a beautiful hazel. I'm like, yeah, they are a beautiful hazel. I totally meant that before. So that's part of the problem. So it's difficult for me to imagine what they look like in real life. But also, it's difficult for me to answer because I still remember this really awkward conversation that I had when the Shiver trilogy came out way back when. I was a new author. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, so I'm basically a redneck. And my British publishers, I was traveling in London, they wanted to shock and awe me, so they took me to the fanciest London restaurant they could possibly come up with. And so I was sitting there feeling super uncomfortable being a redneck. They're ordering things that I don't have any clue what the things are on the menu. I'm just watching them to see how it is that they're eating them. They're like, yeah, we're drinking this one. Oh my, oh, this is a pudding. Oh, or a spoon one. Good. Ha ha ha. And so I'm just already in this kind of uncomfortable situation, and they look at me and they say, yeah, so who would you cast as Sam in Shiver? And I'm like, I don't know. In the book, it says that he's kind of, funny looking. It's sort of awkward and gangly. He's got that big nose that a girl couldn't get away with. He's kind of, like walks like this, her. And I can't really think of an actor that looks like that because I don't think of him as being Hollywood handsome. So I think maybe, I don't know. In my head, he looks kind of like Alex Turner, the lead singer from Arctic Monkeys. Because, he's got that big nose and the floppy hair, and he kind of walks like her. He's sort of so funny looking that he's almost cute. And so as we got up from the table, my editor takes my elbow and says, yeah, and that was his girlfriend sitting right behind us. So she already knows that he's funny looking, but cute, I think, I hope, I don't know. They're not together anymore. I don't think it was my fault. Anyway, so I try not to answer the question anymore. I might break people up.
My name is Kyle, and I was saying, what first inspired you to write about the ley line?
Okay, so this is because I started writing the Raven cycle back when I was younger. I was 19, and I just read The Darkest Rising, which is a series by Susan Cooper, and I loved that series because it took magic and set it in what was then contemporary Wales, and it made the magic feel like it was real. And so I thought, I want to do that. I want to write a series just like that for Virginia, which I love, because we never have any magical stories in Virginia. We just have rednecks. And so I was trying to think of how to put this magic that I knew about, that I had read about, Welsh magic, in Virginia. And so as I was looking for magic that already existed to explain it, I found the ley lines. And there is a ley line, supposedly, that perfectly lines up Wales and Virginia. And so I just stuck it in there. But it's really strange to read about the ley lines because I'm used to reading about mythology, which is really old and ancient, like King Arthur and all of these things which might possibly be true. And then the ley lines are really new mythology. So all of the books are written by people called things like Rainbow Sunshine. And they say things like, I went out into my yard and I just felt a ley line. So it's a very different sort of research experience.
My name is Phoebe, and my question is, as a teen, what were your favorite hobbies?
I was a very strange child. I used to wear black all the time. And are you guys huggers? Or is anybody here a hugger? Right? I'm a not hugger. When people tried to hug me, I would try and do that trick where I would suddenly have way more elbows than anybody is supposed to have, and they would get stabbed trying to hug me. Now that I'm older, I try and be better about it. When people try and hug me, I just vanish like a Dementor into the air. And so I just stood in the corner being sulky all the time. And when people asked me why I wore black all the time, they would say, "So why do you wear black?" And I'd go, "I'm mourning the death of modern society." I mean, I was a riot. I was a great child. But I loved animals because animals never said terrible things to me. And also I used to play the Highland bagpipes competitively. So if you imagine a geek, I was the queen of the geeks, dressed in black all the time. Mourning the death of modern society.
I'm Sophia, and Adam is my favorite character. Can you talk about how you created him?
Adam? Okay, so I told you before that I am not a very good writer. I'm a much better thief. And Adam is one of the characters that I stole from someone who I met on an airplane. So I used to be a full-time portrait artist before I was an author. And so I always try and keep my skills up to date. And so while I was touring for the books, I would bring a sketchbook with me and I would sketch people in airports just to get better at gesture and things like that. And so the annoying thing about people, I don't know if you guys are artists. Yeah, so the annoying thing about people is that they move all the time. Even if you think they're sitting still, it's not true. 2 seconds later, they're always moving. And so I got onto this plane, and I was full of all of these kind of aborted drawings of people. And I noticed that there was a seatmate. There was an empty seat in the middle, and there was this kid who was sitting next to the window, and he had his hat over his face, and he was very still. I couldn't tell if he was sleeping or dead. And I thought, but he's not moving, so I'm going to draw him. And after I'm done, I'll check for a pulse. So I was sketching him, and then after my sketch was done, I hear him say, "Is that me?" Because he'd woken up and he'd seen himself. And so, yes, it was you. And so he saw that I had drawn his hat and I had drawn the way he was sitting. And he also saw that I had drawn one of his hands funny because he had a sort of misshapen hand and I'd just drawn it the way it was. And he said, "You want to know the story of that hand?" And I said, "Yeah, tell me the story of the hand." And so he told me this long, involved story in this sweet Southern accent about how he was in a bar and someone insulted his sister, and the only time ever that he'd ever punched anyone, he had broken his hand on someone's face. And that was the story of this hand. And as he was telling me, I could tell that it actually was not true. Like, it had nothing to do. He was never in a bar defending his sister's honor. But what you could tell is that the way he was holding his hand and telling the story is that he had indeed broken his hand while hitting someone, but he was so ashamed of just that physical reminder of it that he always had to have an excuse for why it was. And so that little seed is what became Adam, that sense that you would make a mistake or act rashly in one moment and then carry it around forever. And he obviously was a super sweet kid, and that was just, it just haunted him forever. So that was the beginning of Adam.
Okay, so my name's Abigail. Throughout your writing process, what kind of help or support do you receive?
I love this question. Okay, so I love this question because I started writing when I was small and evil. I remember wearing black all the time. And I tried a bunch of different writing groups, and they never really seemed satisfying to me. I thought that they should be. It wasn't that I minded getting feedback on my writing, but I always kind of, I don't know, it never excited me, the feedback I got back. I was like, yeah, I can kind of see your point, but that's not really the novel I was trying to write, So when my first novel got published, though, my editor gave me edits, which you always get, and they were amazing. It was like all of the things that I wish had occurred to me, except for it was someone who had objectivity because they hadn't been staring at this manuscript forever. And I thought, okay, wait a second. So if my editor can have great comments on this, that means that there's not just an editor out there who can do it. That means that there's probably lots of people that could actually do this. And so I ran a big thing online. I said to my blog, here's the deal. I'm going to do a critique partner dating service. I'm going to say that I'm going to tell you what kind of books I write, and we're going to swap 50 pages, and we'll do a critique on either side. And if we don't like the critique or the writing, we can walk away, no questions asked. So I went through a couple dozen people, and I found 2 people who were amazing that gave me great critique. And so now, even though my books still get edited by a bunch of people, that happens after it's published, I still have my critique partners that read my drafts before they ever go in. And I recommend that to every young writer. Always have someone who's not your best friend, who's not your sister, who's not a parent, who doesn't have to be nice to you, who reads the same kind of stuff that you like to write, because it's just so helpful to know, even just to have someone who's waiting for the next chapter. So yeah, I have my 2 critique partners that I still send everything.
Oh, back to me. So you're saying that you're like this little girl who always wear black. Were you ever bullied?
I actually was homeschooled from 6th grade on. I was a very strange child in that people bullied me, but I didn't notice it. It's only looking back as an adult that I noticed it. So in the 80s, large glasses were in style. I can't describe to you how large they are. If you take both of your glasses and you put them together, that is close to what the style was for glasses. And my parents thought it would be great to take me, who had terrible vision, and give me these glasses. So they were enormous. And I never ate food. I was a very small, slender, dressed in black child, and with these giant glasses. And kids used to shout, "Owl eyes, owl eyes." But because I was such a strange child, I didn't even know that they were making fun of me, because I didn't care about other people at all. I would just sit and draw in the playground. And so I wasn't bullied, even though they probably were trying.
Okay, so your characters, like Blue and Gansey, have like unique names. How did you come up with the names?
So the way I name my characters is that when you see a character on page for the first time, that's like when you meet someone, you make a snap judgment about them. I mean, we all do it. And then if you're a decent human, then you actually amend that first impression you have with the truth, right? But you see someone and they remind you of your sister, or you see someone and you just assume that because they're dressed nicely that they're, I don't know, you have some snap judgment to them, and then you change it. And I feel like you never get that when you meet a person on the page. The first thing you see is often their name. And so what I try and do is create a name that either puts you in mind of what they might be. Like with Blue, when you see Blue, because it's an unusual name, you assume that she's going to be an unusual person, and that's true. And with Gansey, I wanted to kind of call back to a lot of people who would have read The Great Gatsby. And so you'd already come with the kind of preconceived notion in your head of what kind of a person Gatsby was, and bring that to Gansey instead.
You probably hear from readers a lot. What do they say?
Okay, so I get a lot of letters in the mail because I shut down my email inbox. I got so many emails that I felt bad about not being able to reply to any of them. So now I only answer letters that people send me. So my last letter that I opened up right before I flew here to Arizona was a letter. Well, I'm very well known for my cars. People know that I enjoy racing cars and that I have fast cars. And this letter was a little bit about my books, but most of it was about how she had finally convinced her husband to buy a Mitsubishi Evo because I have a Mitsubishi Evo. And then she said, "You're a loving reader," and then signed it. So yes, I get readers from letters, but they never really include what I think they're going to include.
What do you consider your best accomplishment in life?
No pressure. Actually, yeah, I'm gonna say that when I was a kid, I always thought that I wanted to die before I was 30 because I didn't see any interesting adults. Sorry, all of you adults in the room, but I figured they all looked extremely boring and like they didn't have interesting hobbies, and they'd stopped learning and they'd stopped trying new things. And they were always telling me stories about how the last cool thing they'd done was in college. And I just thought, all right, well, 30 seems like a good expiration date because after that everything is really boring. And so I vowed that I always wanted to live an interesting life and never stop learning. And so I feel I've done that. I feel like I just picked up the cello 2 years ago, and so I'm learning that and always learning something new, going someplace interesting. Yeah, I think that if I time traveled back and I talked to the horrible person I was when I was a teenager, she would be like grudgingly impressed. Now I'd also tell her to grow out her bangs.
What inspired you to include a murder in the Raven Boys?
What inspired me to create a murder? Most of it was because the entire mythology of the ley line is about sacrifice. And so you needed to have a sacrifice to start the whole thing off. But one of the things I really like about magic is that magic echoes the real world. Real world's full of consequences. And so I want the magic to also be full of terrible consequences. I do say, wait, have any of you not read The Raven Boys? Okay, good. So that first line when Noah says that I've been dead for 7 years, I never thought I would be able to get away with that being like a sneaky thing. I thought everyone would know for sure that he was actually dead. And it's amazing. Every time someone is fooled, I feel delight fresh again.
Blue's a great character. What do you like most about her?
I think I really like that she runs her mouth a lot. If she doesn't like something, she just says it immediately. And so when I was a teen, usually I would just sulk about something and not say something out loud. And only when I was in college did I really start to run my mouth. And so I really appreciate the fact that she is young and runs her mouth. Yes. How did I do like on a scale of 1 to 10?
29.
We 9, 7.5, 10.5. Would you tell me if I had done like a 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Good, good.